Okay, hello everyone. This is another week for Subspace desktop development. I will be talking through the issues, the merged PRs, and prepared demo for showing to you. And Leo will explain the front-end changes when I talk about them. So let's start the screen sharing. As a high-level review, lots of changes, but most importantly, we have support for reward address and partial plotting. So these are the most critical changes. Other than that, let's start with the new issues. So starting from here, we have a blockchain and plot tracking. Nazar suggested some changes in the backend, but this is for later. It's a back burner, so we don't need to dive deep on that. This is another bug submitted by Nazar, so we have to fix this. When existing folder from older installation is selected on start, desktop app doesn't recognize that and shows plotting progress that will supposedly run for days, even though everything is already plotted and working just fine. So we have to fix that. Probably Leo will work on that, but I can help. There will be some updates on README for required specs. So app doesn't always restart correctly. Sometimes it was hanging. This was due to the estimation of the blockchain size, and it was due to some backend problem for the Nginx. So not on the Rust side, but on the server side. So Leo, do you want to elaborate on that? Leo fixed that.
Yeah,
with
basically we
permissions.
were doing too many queries in the app start, and now we are just doing one. So as we are now like handling more than 1,000 nodes, I think sometime Nginx was out of capacity, I think. So we configure a new worker to scale a little bit, and after that it started to work correctly. So right now the app just start and do one query, and we instantly got the blockchain size.
Yeah.
And is that to the RPC node or the Bootstrap node, Leo?
To the public RPC node.
Okay, and that's already been deployed to our existing testnet?
Farmnet.
FarmNet, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great, thank you.
And again, like Leo explained, this was a network issue and it's solved, but the issue remains here. The reason is, although it's working correctly at the moment, in case there is a problem with network, we don't handle that error. So when we handle the network error, then we will close this bug. So this is just a reminder for, like, just in case, handle the error if something arises on the network side. But right now, from our experiments, it's working correctly. So this is done on the code side. This PR is on the review. So when I have a approval, it will be merged. And also, this is for improving the menu. This is a new feature we added. I will also cover that. But there are some improvements can be made. For example, about check for updates and a help bar. As you see from my screen, there is a help menu for example, Brave Explorer. We will also probably want that. And also here, like about Brave, we probably want about Subspace desktop and check for updates. So these items are lacking in the menu that is being implemented as new feature. But again, this is not a high priority. It should be done, but sometime. So it's in the
Yeah,
background.
I'm glad you added that, Oskin. Actually, that's something I've been meaning to mention is it would be great if whenever you do that, you could see the current version of the desktop app that you're using. And maybe it could
Exactly.
even say something like protocol version, like desktop app version, because I think that would help a lot with support. Probably the first question we'll ask is like, what version are you running? Because they might be running an old version, and because that's the first question you always ask when you go to tech support, like which version of the software are you running?
I completely agree, and it's even helpful for us developers as well. Sometimes even I forget which version am I working on. So clicking about Subspace desktop would be helpful. Any questions about the open issues?
So yeah, so the menu will be working for all operative system, right? Not for only for macOS like we had before.
Currently, we have only for macOS, but after these changes, I believe it will be integrated for all major 3 platforms. Yeah.
Okay.
The reason it's working only for macOS is we want that because right now the only functionality of menu is providing or enabling keyboard shortcuts for macOS, which is already working for Windows and Linux without menu, and the menu is just makes the UI uglier. So we didn't implement this menu for Windows or Linux. We just disabled them, but it can be opened with a single line of command. So yeah, it's not a big deal. Any more questions on the open issues? I think no. Then I will be proceeding into closed ones. It's a lot. So starting from here. This is discovered later than it's supposed to have. So last week or the week before, I forgot, we updated Tauri version. And with that, this issue was resolved. I discovered that when I was checking the old issues, this just disappeared on its own with the Tauri upgrade, which is fine. This is not affecting our users because it's only happening in the developer mode, so it's not a big deal. This bug was a regression. We fixed that, but after some changes to front end, it was again the case. This bug was opened. We fixed it again. So the app is now remembering the choice for launch on boot is enabled or disabled. We implemented a new feature of entering a reward address. Now the user is able to provide his or her reward address, and in this case, the mnemonic will not be shown. We are also added links to the dashboard so that users can click on the link and will be redirected to the Block Explorer. And we got rid of the password creation page. We no longer read it, so it was not necessary for complicating the workflow. This is one of the keyboard shortcuts. It's solved by adding the menu. So these are two actually duplicates. It's a single issue for macOS. And we were enabling the launch on boot option by default, but we're not notifying the users about that. So I added a notification that Subspace Desktop will be launched on boot in the bottom. I will show it in the demo. And also, Nazar submitted a bug about app doesn't remember the configuration, but that was on a latest release. It was not for the pre-releases. And this bug is not present in the pre-releases. So it's a closed one. It's for all the versions. And again, as Leo mentioned, estimating the plot size or blockchain size is now like immediate, like lightning fast. We got that covered. One of our team members, Ivan, submitted that the logo is not visible in the light mode. Diana worked on that and provided us a logo with black edges. So it's now visible on the white or light mode operating systems. And this was a bug after this implementing the reward address functionality. It was previously when it was first implemented. When user entered a reward address, we were still showing the mnemonic. So now it's no longer the case. We are not revealing the mnemonic if the user entered the reward address. And also there were another bug. If the user did not provide any reward address, there were some other bugs, but we also fixed that. So now the reward address functionality is working completely fine. And any questions about the closed issues?
No questions about specific issues. I'm just curious, are we doing any kind of testing or regression testing to make sure that we're not reintroducing these bugs without having, them being identified manually? Or do you have any thoughts on how we could do that if we're not?
At the moment, no. Like we discussed last week, we should somehow include those automated tests for testing the bugs or if they are resolved or not.
Yeah, I briefly looked into Tori made a smoke tests repository, but it looks like it's really outdated, so it wasn't working when I tried to mess with it.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on anything we might be able to do for that you've used in the past? Can you hear me, Leo?
I am working in a branch that basically tries to create more modules around the libraries used in the application, because right now the code is like zero, got zero modules basically. So create testing for this code will be hard, I think. So I was splitting this in the Polkadot API for the remote node, the Polkadot API for the local node, and so on for each feature used on each page. And I think that after that, and having all this like separated, modularized, we can apply unitary tests to all these functions, and maybe do a more functional test of the whole application. But in the ROS side, I don't have idea on how to do those things.
I,
Shouldn't be hard.
Leo, thanks for that. Since a lot of the app is that most of the app is actually Vue. Do frameworks like Cypress or Selenium, can they be helpful in like at least automatically catching test cases and taking the user's perspective?
Yeah, actually, I shared this diagram to identify all this flow and actually start creating these trees, because are really actually just 3 pages, like the index and the setup and the progress, and then the dashboard actually. So it shouldn't be harder to create this, but we need to have all this flow like declared. The user go to the app, select this button, and if this happens, so maybe we can start defining the all this story, and after that starting to create this testing with Selenium that could cover everything.
Yeah, I can do a research on that. Like, I don't have much expertise on GUI apps testing, but yeah, we can.
Yeah, I think.
No,
Go ahead, Sam.
No, if you can write Vue code, it's like literally it's very easy. So it just tells the DOM it just instructs the DOM to go and interact with some stuff. I'm not 100% sure though if it will work, because if I remember, it's a browser, it's for web apps. So I'm sure there's a comparable framework for like GUI for standalone things that doesn't break your max security. I'll be happy to have a look and give pointers if you need.
Well, it's just running Chromium under the hood, so I mean, it is kind of a browser at the end of the day, so it probably works.
Yeah, it's just a progressive web app.
Okay, I think we just need to separate the testing of the front end and the back end, and I think Selenium is a great. There's probably one level of testing for like, does the UI work? There's like JavaScript testing for the button clicks and whatnot, and like the front end framework itself, like Jest or something like that. And then there's probably another set of tests that you can work on OSCAN on the Rust side, to testing, the Tori API and the Tori interface. Like does, the plotting, can it connect to the node? Can it, create a plot separate from do the buttons work in the way that we expected, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's worth you doing any research on the front end side. I think Leo's definitely got that under control. But if you can look into the back end side, any kind of testing that we can do there.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay, please continue.
All right. So the only open PR at the moment is for partial replica support, and the demo I prepared today is including that changes, so we will be able to see that. And the closed ones are starting from, this is for queuing the network for estimating the blockchain size. This is for fixing remember the preference on auto launch, implementing the reward address, adding menu for Mac, small bug fix again. This is the notification for auto launch, logo fix for wipe mode, and don't show the mnemonic if imported the reward address bug fix. And this is just the version 1. So these are the PRs. Shall I skip to the demo?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. I'm gonna reset this. All right, as you can see, Subspace Desktop will be started on boot. You can disable this from settings, the gear icon on top right. Here. So it's working as expected. And let me first demonstrate the happy path, then the advanced one. And clicked quick start. It will query the blockchain size. Sorry, this is not the updated one. My bad. Okay. Then I can show the reward address function. The partial plotting demo will be later. We showed this in the Monday meeting, but let's do this again for the people that are only subscribed to the Subspace Desktop meetings. In here, we have a cancel and continue button. When clicked cancel, it goes back to the welcome page. And if we paste a valid Polkadot address in here, I will just get it from my Polkadot wallet. It will enable the continue button. And if it's in the wrong format, it will guide us so, and this continue button will be disabled. And Leo's change, like this is gathered like lightning fast, and if you click start plotting, it will ask for the permission for the user, and we will be able to start plotting. And in here, since we imported a reward address, it's skipping the middle page and doesn't show mnemonic. These are the changes related to the reward address. So any questions about that?
Can you go back to the screen where after you import the reward address, or sorry, the one where you have the ability to import the reward address, please? Yeah.
Here.
Okay, so you added the cancel button too. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you go back one more? Click cancel, please. Do we think advanced is the right word here, or should we be a little bit more explicit, like import reward address?
I favor import reward address, but yeah, we can change it.
Okay. Is quick start the right word for the happy path? Should we call that something like create a new plot or start from scratch or?
Quick start sounds appealing, but start from scratch is more explicit.
Dana, you had done a lot of these customer interviews around that iteration, version 2 of the UI. What do you think what was the way that was the most obvious to people?
That's a hard question because we didn't have two different paths like this before. But maybe we can just, I'm farm the first time or something like that. Like I'm a new here, or maybe I already have address or something like that. So we will have two audiences here: people who just started and people who maybe has another farm or not. I don't know. So maybe we can just name it that way, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Something like instead of quick start, it would say start a new farm, or I'm a new farmer, or first time farmer, and then below it would say I already have a reward address from another farm. Maybe something shorter than that, but something along those lines. Like I farmed before and import address from farm, maybe something like that. You think you can play with that, Oskin?
Yeah, sure.
Can you show us the actual quick start path now?
Of course. Let me reset just in case. And quick start, it goes directly to this page, setup plot page, and the allocated is retrieved from the telemetry. And when I say,
can you show us with less than 4.18 gigabytes?
Sorry?
This does partial replica plotting, right?
No, this version is for reward address. I couldn't find the partial replica version.
Oh, I see. So we went backwards one. Okay, so you can't demo the partial replica right now.
I'm trying to run the developer build in the background, so if it catches up, I will show it.
Okay.
But there was a slider, and it was not going below 1. So I set the minimum barrier to 1 gigabyte, and the maximum was of the criteria was this, and second criteria was 100 gigabytes, because in the protocol, I think we have a maximum plot size of 100 gigabytes. So which
actually that's not correct. So there's a maximum. So I guess there's a difference between a plot and a farm. And so the maximum plot size is 100 gigabytes, but they're actually creating a farm, which could have multiple plots, and there's no upper limit on that with the multi-replica.
I know, but multi-replica is not implemented in the partial replica. So I'm gonna make it unbounded when it's
I wouldn't add that extra complexity in. Don't just the upper limit should be the blockchain size in partial replica farming, and once we have multi-replica, it should be the
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's more confusing that way. And I think Yvonne already merged, or it's in the approval process right now for multi-replica. So
yeah, it's working. By the way, I got it run, so I can show it.
Great.
So in advanced, nothing is changed, so I'm not going over it again. In quick start, it goes directly to here. And at most, it allows you to allocate for the maximum size of the blockchain. And I tested it with different values. It was successful, and it was showing the correct plotting progress. So when I say I only want to allocate 1 gigabyte, it was allocating only 1 gigabyte, and the plotting progress was 4 times faster than when I select 4 gigabyte. So let me select 1 gigabyte and select start
Can
plotting.
you also type in the amount
Yeah.
in the allocated? Okay, cool. Great.
So there's a small bug, like, yeah. And then it will start plotting, as you can see in here. Everything works. We can also reveal the mnemonic as usual. And it took me around 20 minutes for 1 GB when I tried. So that's all. And after that, I was also able to go to the dashboard, and there were no bugs in the dashboard page as well. So it's working. At least tested on my machine. And Justin will probably confirm when he tries on all major 3 platforms.
20 minutes for 1 GB?
Right now, yeah, for CPU plotting.
So that's 3 GB an hour, 300 hours for a terabyte?
Yeah, on my machine at least, yeah, iMac.
That's 10 days to plot 1 terabyte? It's like 12 days, almost 2 weeks. That's not what we had from the plotting benchmarks. It should be like 4 hours to plot 1 terabyte on a CPU.
4 hours for 1 GB on a CPU.
4 hours for 1 terabyte.
Oh, 1 terabyte, okay.
Does that mean it's the network that is the bottleneck here? Is it the sync process?
I think so, because those are in together, and we already discussed with Nazar that in the real application, the network will be the bottleneck, not the plotting. But this was the case for GPU, not for CPU. So I'm not 100% sure.
But still, it's not. It shouldn't be that slow.
Okay.
So I thought we decoupled the networking so it syncs and plots in parallel. It doesn't wait for a full sync before it starts plotting.
Exactly. So we can make it sync before plotting, just for test case, and do the plotting afterwards to see that if there is bug in plotting speed.
Oh, I don't think we need to do that.
Okay.
I mean I think you could just test it internal to the app. We wouldn't want to. That would be a complicated way to test it. So right now it syncs archive segment by archive segment over the network, and then for each archive segment, then it sends it to the plotter, and then Erasure encodes it. Okay. 20 minutes for 1 GB.
And that's on Mac. I'm sure it'd be significantly worse on Windows.
Yeah,
What do you say?
syncing is worse in Windows than Mac.
Why is that?
There's a multi-threading issue. I think it's actually in Substrate, where only single cores are used on Windows. It's reported on our Mono repo. We were just talking to Nazar about it a couple days ago. But it's like, for example, even prior to multi-replica and partial replica, Mac OS syncs in about an hour versus Windows is like 7 to 10 hours.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a huge problem. Okay. And it's because it can only use 1 core to sync?
I believe so. That's what it looks like, because it throws an error on Windows in the note. It says unable to use multi-threading on Windows, falling back to single core. And then that would obviously kind of correlate with the extreme time difference between the two.
But I mean, it's not that intensive of a process in the first place, so I wouldn't imagine that it's like throttling the CPU to sync.
I think it's throttling the actual network download. I mean, because it can't download the network quick enough, it doesn't matter how efficient plotting is, because it's still bottlenecked by the fact it doesn't have what it needs to plot.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. The network sync is not CPU intensive, or it should not be CPU intensive. So it shouldn't matter if it's single threaded or or multi-threaded in that respect. Okay, so that's actually a huge deal. So that's something that's probably like the biggest #1 priority in the whole project right now, is to sort that out. Why it's taking 10 hours to sync 1 GB on Windows, if we assume that we're going to have a large user base using that.
Yeah, I think so too. But it's probably, like Justin said, originates from Substrate and then monorepo and then here.
Okay. Okay, I'll talk to Nizar more about that. Have we been able to confirm, like, when we run the client, like the headless client on Windows, that we have the same issues, the same sync time, the same plotting time?
Yeah, it's still very problematic and takes a pretty long time.
What if you run just the client itself without a farmer and you just try to sync the network?
No drastic change. It's really the syncing that takes forever.
How do you define syncing, Justin?
The node downloading the history from other nodes. When the node actually says syncing, you know, best block that I have is 1,000 trying to get to 100,000.
Okay, so if you sync, and so if you run a client and a farmer at the same time on Windows, it has the same performance as just running a client by itself in terms of the sync time?
Yeah, at least from what my observation. I mean, obviously there might be a slight difference, but from what I can tell, they seem pretty comparable. There's no like major delay if I start the farmer or if I don't.
Okay. Okay. This is great. I mean, at least we've got what you guys have built. I mean, this is really good that we've got we've got partial replica plotting and the reward address working. So I think this is much better user experience than what we had last week. I think it's a lot simpler and more clear.
And the next week, the plan is to implement multi-replica and fix other bugs.
Is there any feedback from the group on the user experience or the demo?
Skylar had a feedback, but on a previous version, not. So after reward address, we released version 0.3, and with the partial plotting, since it's a big new feature, it should be 0.4. The feedback Skylar gave was on 0.3. He was not able to start the application on boot. So app was not starting itself on boot, which is weird because I couldn't reproduce it on my machine. We are both using M1 Max. So we will do a Google Meet with Skylar. So it will be an in-depth debugging and see if it's something related to his machine or something related to code.
Okay. Any other feedback from anyone on the call? Okay. Go ahead, Justin.
One thing that you had mentioned last week, Jeremiah, is that it seemed like the timing was off on like the estimated time versus real time. I did do like a side-by-side measurement on that, and it does look like the estimated time in the Desktop Explorer is a little bit quicker than reality. In my case, it took about 45 minutes to actually finish on OS X, and it said it would take about 30 minutes. Wasn't sure if that was like an actual bug we wanted to report, but maybe something we can try and improve.
So it's just optimistic into how fast it's going to take to plot?
Yeah, optimistic.
Okay. That's probably not critical right now, but thanks for pointing that out, Justin. I think what we had talked about doing, if I recall, was to have like some sort of a benching script that we would run on startup that would try to plot like, I don't know, 10 megabytes of random data and estimate the throughput from there that we can run like on the back end on the Tori side. We could probably even make that part of the desktop app eventually, because I think we're going to want the CLI to eventually give a better user experience on the plotting progress too. But I think that we can probably just capture that in a feature request and push it a little bit further out on the roadmap.
Awesome.
Benching for that tracking is already opened as an issue, but with a low priority. So we are tracking it.
Okay. Okay,
I,
can
I
you?
remember I
ahead,
remember about an issue, Auskun. I don't know if you remember this when we were doing the Tauri upgrade on the
Mhm.
versions, and we have to set the scope of the file system that the app has like permissions. I
Yeah,
think
I
that
remember.
with that new feature, we have this problem that if the user want to plot in an external hard drive, he will not be
Yeah,
able to select that
yeah,
because
true.
we cannot dynamically set the scope that the app has permission in Taudio right now. So
True.
that will also be a big problem if we cannot
So
find a way to set it.
as a solution, we could just enable all the volumes that are active from the start.
Yeah, but we don't have a way to like before, like to say Tauri, I want to use the full scope because you have to manually set, and you don't know if it's an
I see
in
your point.
disk, C disk, or where it's mounted.
I see your point, but there has to be a way. So if you cannot find it, I will contact with the Tower team from Discord. Maybe they will show us some way out. But I
I
see
think
your
that's
point.
what you're saying, Leo, right? Is it's actually currently not supported in Tori to do that?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So you have to explicitly tell it which drives you want to authorize. So if it's a non-standard
Yeah,
drive, you're saying like an external, like an ERNF or something like that, that they can't select
yeah.
that as a
I
plot.
read a couple of issues in Tauri actually, and at that point there was no solution. I hope that for the latest version we have something new, but now I don't know how to fix it.
Okay, well, as a workaround, we can just, if the user wants to use an external hard drive, we can just ask them to use the terminal application until we can support that. But yeah, it's definitely something that we want to build into this eventually.
But
Okay,
it's weird because they are trying to add like security features to Tauri, and that's the reason they are trying to add this scope in here and configuration in that. But probably the new version, like the new full version of Tauri, will have this solved. But
okay. Leo, can you follow up on that with the Tori team to confirm that or see what we can do, like if that's part of the roadmap or some pull request we
yeah, I
can
have
submit
forgot
to.
about that, and probably I will create the issue and start the conversation from there in Tauri.
All right, thank you. Leo, did you have any feedback or comments you wanted to add on the work you've done for this last iteration?
No, not much. I have been working basically in these performance issues. Can you go back to the, or maybe I can share my screen?
Of course, I'm stopping mine.
This will- Can you see my screen, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this one basically that after a while we have this problem that the is like not releasing the garbage collector or something like that, but it's a memory book related to the app that is not clearing the memory. So after a while, you can get like 2 GB of RAM in here. Nazar has consumed 1.5, and yeah, I basically checked that, and it was true. And I am working in this large memory consumption by the front end, and it will include a couple of other issues like the way we are treating the farmed list, the farmed block list. We are just storing it in a local storage and retrieving it when the uploads. So after a while, it will impact in the app performance. And yeah, I think that those are the latest changes that I've been working in the app itself. So they are not related to UI things, to UI changes.
Okay, makes sense. Do you think you'll be able to complete those this week, Leo?
Yeah, that, and also the telemetry server is working. We can use it. We just need to start. Right now, it will show a blank screen until we start having like data to show. So after we integrate this telemetry endpoint to the chain spec, and we get a new release, and a lot of people start to send their telemetry feeds to our server, we will be able to show all the nodes. Right now, I have set like a maximum of 5,000 clients to show. So let's see if we can reach up to there. And if we get stuck in 5,000, we will need to increase it or scale it actually.
Okay. What's the next step to get that into the chain spec?
Just add it. We need
Who
just to add one
would
line.
normally be responsible for that?
I probably will create the issue and add this to the chain spec because it's just one
Okay.
line.
Can you notify Nazar after this, like immediately after this, because I'd like to get that done today, so that we can get this rolled out as soon as possible.
Sure.
Do we need to update the documentation as well, Justin?
Yeah, it'll just be a quick update. I'll get that pushed right after this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that. So I just need to send to Justin the final URL, and we will use that. It's telemetry that subspace network actually.
Yeah.
It's just that.
Okay. And we're not going to put that. Cool. And we're not going to put that on the website yet, Diana. We'll just share that as a separate link, and after it's, maybe in a couple of days after we're sure it's all working correctly as we hope, then we'll expose that on the homepage too.
Yeah, of course. We'll be glad to add.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big next step. So the sooner we can get that done, the better. And if you can just notify me once that's ready, Leo. I'm actually talking to Nazar right after this, so that's going to be our priority to get that today to make that ready. Okay. Can you guys, maybe Oskin or Justin, I'm not sure who's best, can you try to update us on how much of this that we just saw has been tested, on what platform, by what users, what's actually live on our test network right now, on our farm net right now, if anything?
Yeah, so the most recent version I've tested is the 3.01, which is the one right before partial replica was implemented. So majority of those bugs didn't have any major problems. And I had mentioned that we were good to continue to move it along, minus the error with Windows taking a long time. I did make sure to mention that's starting to become more and more problematic. I haven't fully rolled it out to the community just yet, because it was at the same time I knew Oskin was about a day from getting that partial replica release out. But the community, or I'm sorry, the team has tested out 0.3, and Skylar's tested out and found that M1 bug that Oskin mentioned. And I've seen a few of the ambassadors and some of the more closely following community members have tested out version 0.3 as well, but I haven't pushed it to the community via announcement or anything just yet.
Okay, and what do we need to do before we can push it out via an announcement, or should we?
I don't know if it's necessary. I was thinking because we're doing one, we have a big update, to the partial replica. Plus, we're going to be having everyone update their telemetry server. I feel like having them upgrade to this version and then having them do all these other things right after would seem maybe a little unnecessary, at least like from the user perspective.
So actually on that note, so once we have the chain spec updated, we actually have to incorporate that into the desktop app as well, right, Oskin?
Yeah.
Okay, so if Nazar can update the chain spec right after this, how quickly can you have that rolled up to the desktop app that is the one that we point to on the website so they can have the link to download the correct one?
Very quickly.
Okay,
Like
so let's aim to do that. So that way, whenever we do make that stress test announcement and we do drop some links for which version to use, that they're downloading, because we don't want them to download the desktop app and then just point it to the old telemetry server, right? That would kind of defeat the whole purpose of what we're trying to do.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the deployment side we need to cover? So Oskin, so this partial replica farming is in review by Nazar right now?
Yes. It's an open PR. When it's approved, it should be merged automatically.
Okay. All right, and yeah, and that's not a blocker for the stress test, so that'll come out later. The main blocker for the stress test is just getting the right telemetry server in there. Okay, so what is your expectation right now on how many days of effort it's going to require to get multi-replica farming implemented?
Most probably for the next meeting, I mean next week, it should be done if there is no major issues come along. For partial replica, there were no major issues, so I was able to do it. I'm expecting the same for multi-replica.
Okay. And what is the definition of done?
I will be able to demonstrate. I will be able to demonstrate it like that.
Okay, working demo. So my definition of done is PR is approved and merged and on the website. So what is your estimate on when it will be about like finished?
Well, it really depends. Like this PR is opened for like yesterday. So it could have been merged right now, but I can ping Nazar or Leo for not waiting, and I'm sure they will respond and review it.
Okay, but that's not blocking you working on multi-replica farming, is it?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Like I'm explaining. No, it's not blocking. I'm explaining. You said like your definition of done is PR being merged, so it can be merged. Like there were no major issues holding down partial replica to be merged in the first place. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. So so the audit is going to start a week from Monday for this code. So it would be ideal if we can have multi-replica merged before then. And then, of course, it's going to follow later with the desktop app and getting it deployed. But right now, the key driver is getting all of this implemented before the audit starts. The key deadline.
Yeah, I will do my best.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Oskin. Thanks, Leo. This is great work on everything. Really happy with the progress here. We just have a little bit further to go, and we're going to be at a really big milestone here. So let's just keep it up a little bit further. Leo, do you have anything, or I guess before we move on to the Subspace Explorer, are there any other comments from the group? Any questions on the desktop app before we close out?
No, not from my side. I am just finishing some testing in Mac. I get a Mac to be able to test on all platforms, so will be faster to be faster on testing actually. So yeah, all good for now.
Okay. Leo, is there anything that's been pushed to the to the protocol? Any changes in the core protocol that are going to require any updates in the front end? Polkadot.js apps?
In the terms of regarding the blocks, no, actually, I don't think so. And for the events that we are using, not actually, but there is one issue that Nazar posted on the Genesis block, that it doesn't have the same structure that all the other blocks. So we have to add, I have to add the correct structure decoding for this Genesis block. So when someone query the first block, the 0 block, we don't have the decoding error in the Explorer. That leads actually to another thing that we have to be aware after the mainnet launch, actually, when we start to handle these version upgrades, right? So we need to start like declaring that from this block to this block, we have this structure. From this version to this version, we have this structure. Like all the exchange does, actually, in the Explorer. All of them, when they change the a breaking when they have a breaking chain version that change the types like in a hard way, they define this. Hey, if someone is query this block, please use this structure. So we have to be aware of that after the main launch, and if we start covering this use case. But for now, it's just the Genesis block and the other blocks. So I will be working on that after having the telemetry and probably the new release done, because I tried to fix it and looks like the full problem is not solved yet. It's not just decoding the block. I have to hide another. I have to consider other things, not only the block itself.
In addition to what Leo's been saying, when I was dealing with implementing partial replica, I was trying to get the dependencies from monorepo, and the revision I was using cost me like many hours because due to some bug in the node side. And after discussing it with Nazar, he said, "Oh, this was a breaking change, and you actually need to use an older version of the monorepo unless you are supporting multi-replica." So what I'm arriving at is it may be good to have labels for breaking change in the monorepo as well in the Subspace desktop, because we are covering these in the core protocols thing, I know, but there are lots of things to keep in my head, and sometimes it may get complicated. So it would have saved me a couple of hours having those labels.
Makes sense. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Oskin. And that's something that Sam and I are going to be working on, is trying to get a better release deployment flow with these better tags and documentation of these things.
Okay.
Leo, is there anything, it seems like last week we were talking about, now that we have the reward address, that sometimes it's confusing for people when they search for their reward address in the block explorer. It doesn't show unless they search for like the signing key, which they don't know anymore, that they can't find their rewards. So there was something we had to do to sort of disambiguate those. Is that,
the block explorer is showing correctly the address and everything, but in the Polkadot Explorer, you cannot like review an address. I think there is no way to paste this address and show the balance, except on the account section, where the user actually is viewing his Polkadot extension accounts. So if the user has this Polkadot extension account and his account imported in there, he will be able to check the balance. Otherwise, there is no way to view it, to check this account balances.
Okay,
so right now we are for each block we are basically using the farmer public key to the block itself, and the reward address is in an event, inside an event.
Mhm.
So for people that are not used to these events, to check the events and everything, will be hard to validate that this block was farmed by me, yes, and the reward address received the transaction. But the event is in there. And actually in the testnet, where we were in a live testnet with a lot of transaction and a lot of events, for example, the relayer events that are a lot, will be really hard to go to a block and find this event to the reward address transaction. And at that point, I think that from the UI and UX, I think that we start to think in building our own explorer, something like that, to be able to query a wallet balance and an address balance and things like that.
Okay, so right now the user can either run the desktop app and see what their number of TSSC is, or they can import their mnemonic into the extension and then load that in the account section of Polkadot.js apps, and then they can see what their balance is. But there's no way for them to just permissionlessly or like publicly query an address and see what the results are like you can in Etherscan. See what the balance
Exactly.
is.
There is no like one page where you can check this address information. Yeah.
Got it. That's just not supported with Polkadot.js apps.
Yeah.
No, it's not the intention actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So the users that are like looking for that are trying to see themselves in a block, they're just like manually scanning the blocks for their reward address. Or I mean, even before that, for their signing key.
They might be taking, like you signed this block and it provides the hash in Informer. They might be searching that block and then being like, okay,
right,
it said this address won, but this address doesn't have anything. How come
right,
it won and now it's empty?
Right. Okay, so that's the confusion. Okay, makes sense. Losing people. Okay, there we go. They're back. Okay, is there anything else we need to cover, guys?
I don't have anything else on my side.
Everything I had.
Great. Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks everybody for watching today. We'll see you guys again next week.